Lies of P is a newer Souls-like to come out this year in 2023, published and developed by Neowiz. It also happens to be one of my first Souls-like, and it really solidifies my love for this genre. Now, I could spend all day singing its praises from the combat to the weapons, music, environment, and story. While the game isn't perfect, it's damn near close in my book, and I figured it'd be more fun to discuss the boss fights instead. There are 25 unique bosses in Lies of P, including optional ones, and I want to break them down and rank them against each other in terms of difficulty, presentation, story, and enjoyability. Be warned, I am newer to the genre and not at all an expert on these games. Elden Ring was my first Soulsborne, and I've been going down the list ever since, with Bloodborne being the series I am currently tackling. My opinion may be flawed, or just different from yours. I will start with bosses I deem to be on the lowest tier and go up from there. Each boss will be in order of which I find the lowest to highest of said tier. Feel free to rank the bosses in the comments as well. I'd like to know your experiences compared to mine. The first tier we have here is maidenless. These fights, I would say, are unimpressive, boring, or annoying. The first one on the list at the lowest is Walker of Illusions. It is a mini-boss that shows up towards the last half of the game when you are in a hurry to arrive at the attacked Hotel Crot. Let me tell you, this boss irritated me to no end. It was just an elite version of another enemy type of relatively the same moveset. Probably the least interesting type of bosses that games tend to have. I believe the only thing that makes this fight special is the cloning it does around 50% health. Boy, do I hate this fight. It triggered the hell out of me. Between the constant quick swiping attacks that I swear I was parrying, and the very little room it leaves for me to attack drove me mad. I spent most of the time healing the undeserved chip damage because the parry window was so tight. When I did manage to stagger the enemy, it ran away like a little bitch and did a scream attack that not only sent a wave of disruption around it, but it cleared its staggered status. I promised that I'd give this boss the lowest ranking I could while fighting it, and that is what is happening here today. Was this the hardest fight in the game? Absolutely not. It was the most irritating and least creative in my opinion, so I deem it maidenless. Survivor is an annoying, optional mini-boss that you came across when you're exploring Vanini's workshop. He is a survivor of the workshop tower collapsing and holds a sense of guilt since he ran away. Due to that guilt, he swears to kill all puppets he finds and acts on that desire when we come across him. I really have nothing to say about him besides the fact that he took me more tries than I'd like to admit. Enemies that have incredibly long chains of attacks and barely any windows to retaliate drive me mad sometimes. He's not too tough, just annoying if you're impatient like me. The Atoned is another optional mini-boss who guards the cable railway outside of the Path of Misery. If you kill the survivor and do the Stalker greeting, you are completely able to avoid her. I've watched a few others fight her, and the fight seemed pretty slow and easy with a dash of acid to mix it up. Mad Doggy is an inoffensive mini-boss that we encounter at the very beginning of the game. We find him terminally ill and begging our father Geppetto for answers about his murdered colleagues. The first time I fought him in the demo, I found him rather difficult. Upon full release of the game, he actually turned out to be rather slow and extremely easy to backstab. Therefore, he is deemed maidenless simply because, for me, he is the least memorable of the NPC variants and particularly easy to parry. Simon Manus, Arm of God. This one is going to be controversial. I'm not sure how others perceive Simon Manus, as I have avoided all opinions and tier lists for this game in order to come up with my true and authentic opinions. Let me just say, this fight was extremely easy for me. It took me a total of 3 attempts to beat the final boss of this game, when many bosses have taken me more tries. It was so easy that I was hoping there would be a phase 3 or something to redeem the slow, clumsy, and easy to dodge movements in the first phase. Phase 2 picked up the danger factor, but not nearly enough to redeem the fight for me. He is supposed to be the most dangerous man in craft.
I am the danger.
The one I must stop from spreading his disease of evolution across the world. When I am at the end of a game, I am expecting the final fight to put me through hell, to make me take everything I've learned and earned thus far and put it to good use. It just didn't feel that way in this fight. I sort of brute forced my way through it and didn't really learn the second phase as well as I would have liked. It almost ruined the end of the game for me. Almost. We'll talk about that later though. For the next tier, we have Tarnished. These fights are inoffensive or just okay. Puppet of the Future is a slow, tedious fight that shows up in Vanini Works and the Barren Swamp. It truly tests your patience, especially when put in a corruption-infested environment where rockets are being shot at you from all odd angles. The fight isn't terrible or memorable, they're just sort of there. Door Guardian is a gimmick fight outside of the Arch Abbey, where you have to basically do enough damage to his right foot to stagger him and then do a massive amount of damage to his head. Otherwise, you are stuck dealing with his slow but hard-hitting moves and shock status buildup that reduces your stamina regen and healing. This fight isn't the worst, but isn't my favorite. It takes quite a few hits to stagger him, and while he is a very slow boss, he hits so hard and the shock is so punishing, it drove me mad. For this next tier, we have the Hunters. These are decent or good adequate fights, or perhaps just the lore is interesting around them and I enjoy that. The first 3 on this list are optional mini-bosses whose movesets weren't all too exciting, difficult, or unique. The characters themselves did have an interesting story, which balanced them out for me, so I'm just going to go through them quickly. Owl Doctor was an interesting character you encounter in the Barren Swamp. He actually shared a relationship with Adelina and wanted to escort her to their safe house in Elysian Boulevard, but things didn't go quite as planned and they were separated. Though the Owl Doctor didn't start out mad, the reality of the petrification disease broke him down and he swore to offer mercy to everyone he met by treating them with a generous hand of death. Black Cat is the younger brother of the Red Fox and suffers from blindness. Together, they seek the golden coin fruit that we have in Hotel Cropt. Both siblings partake in tricking us into helping them throughout the story in order to cure his blindness. While they aren't my favorite characters in the story, I don't think they're the worst either. From their perspective, they are willing to fool others in order to help each other and stay out of trouble forever. That, in my eyes, is more forgivable than other actions. You hurt my family! Which is why I spared them in my first playthrough. Perhaps that makes me a fool. Corrupted Parade Master. My opinion might be slightly skewed on this one, but I truly didn't enjoy this fight all too much. He came right after I had come across the dreadful Walker of Illusions, who had already triggered the hell out of me. As his name implies, he is a corrupted version of the Parade Master, and his moves feel a lot faster the second time around, with a couple of new attacks thrown in there, including add-ons that are truly only there to distract and frustrate you. This fight forces you to be on your toes, and there's not a lot of room to screw up. I hated the fight at the time, but I think if I went back for another round when I wasn't triggered, it wouldn't have been so difficult or frustrated me as much as it did. Now we have the Pale Bloods. These are good fights that I fairly enjoyed. Robber or Weasel. This little bastard, oh my gosh. Was I the only one who got my ass handed to me by this little shit? Thus far, the actual difficulty of these NPC mini-bosses weren't all too memorable, but none of them quite hit me like this one. We find her hanging around the collapsing Krat Central Station, talking about taking from the rich and giving to the poor. And while I can typically get behind that message, I cannot handle those aggressive axe attacks and throwables. Mad Clown Puppet was a nightmare. I never truly understood people's fears of clowns until this bastard chased me outside of the Estella Opera House. Though he is an optional mini-boss, the challenge of learning his fight was all too tempting. He hit hard, and though he looked slow, would pull a fast one every now and then. Not to mention his creepy little smile and laugh truly unsettled me. I'd say he was fairly difficult, but actually fun. Definitely one of the better mini-boss encounters. Champion Victor was inoffensive fun. A fight that lured me into thinking it'd be easy, but if I'm not paying attention and dodging / parrying often enough, he takes me out. He was once a wrestler and deemed the Hercules of Krat, but temptation pulled him in the wrong direction and he found himself messing around with the alchemist. Luckily, this is a fight that isn't a two-phaser, and while he has a phase transition, it happens around 60% of his health, where his hits become more aggressive, with an extra sneaky one thrown in here or there. Oh, our good old Parade Master. The first fight of the game that I deem a very good tutorial boss. While not truly difficult, and there to really teach you the mechanics of the game, I say he was fun and good at preparing you for what the game expects you to do. Parry. If you try to rely on dodging, you will regret it. Those Red Fury attacks can't be dodged easily or blocked, so you need to perfect parry them. Let me tell you, I never thought I'd parry a day in my life until this game forced me to and rewarded me for it. Parrying this guy gave me the confidence to go forward and attempt to parry every move, and then every, give or take a few, boss, enemies, and even helped train me to parry in other games. The fight flowed so nicely and genuinely felt fun and exciting, and set a wonderful precedent for what the rest of the game would be.
Welcome to How to Pronounce. In today's video, we'll be focusing on a new word that you might find challenging or intriguing. Welcome.
King's Flame Fuoco. Oh boy, this big boy really gave me a hard time my first go around. It took me between 1 and 2 hours to put down this puppet, and man did they make me work for it. We find him in Vanini Works, guarding the factory's flame. Despite his moveset not being too crazy, his attacks are dangerous. Especially in his last 50% of health, when he spits flames that cover nearly the entire arena and does massive heat buildup. This fight really pushed me to the brink and showed me that this game wasn't going to be taking it easy after the scrapped Watchman. I will say, after learning his moveset and coming back 2 other times, the fight isn't nearly as difficult, but you could say that about a lot of these fights, and it doesn't take away from the fun of it. The green monster of the swamp was a fun and challenging fight that we encountered in the barren swamp. I don't think even after getting my ass handed to me over the course of several hours did I ever find myself getting triggered. His attacks are fast and fun to learn, and they really don't allow you to brute force your way through this battle at all. My only true complaint would be, I don't think his second phase needed its own health bar. The fight is difficult enough between the decay and punishing hits that I think it would have been better to give him more health overall and give him a 50% phase transition. I ended up leaning on the Spectre to help me get to the phase 2 faster once I realized there was one. Other than that, phase 2 was when the real battle began. He sort of morphs into a nearby scrapped Watchman and picks up some of those attacks we saw before. Though phase 2 doesn't let you get too comfortable because there are sneaky little sweeping attacks in there that really throw you off and punish you for not preparing for them. Fallen Archbishop Andreas. This is when I truly began to rage in this game. This is the true difficulty filter for this game in my eyes. Many say it's the Scrap Watchman. I say it was the Fallen Archbishop. We find the once saint of Krot, a disgusting monstrosity, in the St. Frangelico Cathedral. Despite giving us so much room for this fight, it feels scarily tight at times. Like others on this list, there is truly no room to brute force this fight. You will learn the moveset, and you will learn where it's safe to hit him, and you will learn to parry his attacks, or you're not making it to phase 2. Yes, there's a second phase, with an entirely new health bar. A trend that I personally didn't enjoy all too much going forward, but for this fight, I didn't hate it. After mastering phase 1, you are rewarded with a battle with the one-winged angel, where the camera really doesn't know where to be if you're locked onto him. I truly think phase 2 stopped this from being a perfect boss, as it truly felt awkward and frustrating at times even after learning it. Though taking this behemoth of a boss down felt truly rewarding and exhilarating, and reminded me of why I love these games so much. On a second playthrough, he didn't feel nearly as difficult besides that second phase, but that doesn't take away from the scope of this fight. Now for the final tier, the Elden Lords. The Black Rabbit Brotherhood and the eldest of the Black Rabbit Brotherhood are probably going to be my most controversial opinion on this list. I hate the Black Rabbit Brotherhood. I also loved their addition to the game. Now, ask me during the fight if I liked those guys, and I'd tell you, hell no. But sitting back on it, I think these fights really taught me something. Strategy. In this game, you really can't take the same approach in every fight, and this battle truly teaches you that for the first time. You really want to focus on fighting the eldest brother, but his siblings will not make it easy on you. You want to beat them all extremely fast, but no. You need to take your time and plan out how fast you want to tackle each sibling. Kill the eldest too fast, and each sibling will come down and make the fight a living hell. When we fight this crew for the second time, after the eldest brother is dead, it's wise to try to keep two siblings to an even amount of health so you can eliminate them together and fight the resurrected brother alone. Is fighting multiple enemies annoying? Absolutely. The Shadows of Yharnam seriously made me consider quitting Bloodborne after nearly 30 attempts. These guys don't have to be the Shadows of Yharnam though. If you take your time, strategize, and ignore how absolutely infuriating his siblings are, it's actually a fun fight to learn. I know that's way easier said than done though. Especially when you break his sword and he does a fraction of the damage he did before, it was truly rewarding. That all being said, I celebrated the death of this annoying crew. While I like what they taught me, I found them annoying as a group, especially the youngest and the maniac. Between being scorpioned across the arena while I'm trying to focus on one enemy, to being pelted by tiny little attacks like a mosquito, and then being launched into the air, I hated those two. Heck, if it was the eldest and the eccentric, the fight would have been fine. But no. Those two, they ruined all the enjoyment of this fight for me. I hate them, they suck, but I appreciate them. White Lady, oh White Lady. Not only was her fight the only unique and truly memorable NPC fight for me, her story truly touched me, and I felt myself wishing for the first time that I didn't need to kill an enemy in this game. Her real name is Patricia, and Adelina is her older sister. Together, they were both beautiful singers in Krot, but jealousy drove Adelina to poison her poor little sister and ruin her voice. Ugh. When I found this out, I wish I had never given Adelina that damn apple. Now, while Adelina lies trapped in the Estella Opera House due to her stubbornness, Patricia dedicates her time to seeking revenge on puppets, whom she believed killed her sister, and decorates her own personal stage with their lifeless bodies while her sister sings a beautiful song in the background. Her moves are fast and precise, and she is one of the first bosses who parries you, I believe, which I found pretty unique. Overall, the fight was a challenge, but unique, sad, and something I wish we could have avoided by finding her sister Adelina before we found her. Romeo, King of Puppets. I must say, for me, this fight was a love at first encounter. Between the cutscene that really tells you that Geppetto, surprise surprise, can't be trusted, the beautiful and slow music in the background, the King of Puppets' obvious attempts to communicate with you and not be your enemy, the theatrical theme of it, I just fell in love. Not to mention the fight flowed so nicely and truly felt like a rhythm, a dance between two brothers who really didn't need to fight. Too deep? Maybe. But when you uncover the backstory between Romeo and Carlos, it adds extra weight and emotion to this fight. Hell, when you lose, the King of Puppets mourns your death. This was the second time I truly wished we didn't have to kill an enemy in the game, but Geppetto's lies had claws that reached far too deep. Phase 2 is where Romeo is revealed to be inside controlling the King of Puppets, and here the pace picks up quite quickly. Though I do think that Phase 2 doesn't have to be as difficult as it feels, I truly panicked when fighting him and ended up summoning because I felt like I needed to. But I feel like the fight would have been better had I not. I actually ended up parrying some of his moves that I thought I wouldn't be able to, which goes to show that a fight can really get in your head and mess you up. I think had I been more aggressive in Phase 2, it would have gone better. Otherwise, Romeo, King of Puppets, was a beautiful fight I did not mind redoing over and over again. Alright, don't judge this placement, but I loved the Scrapped Watchman fight so freaking much. I loved it! The Scrapped Watchman truly set the tone for me for how difficult this game was going to be. I'd say he was the first difficult fight as he showed me what the rest of the game would be like. Hard, fast-hitting attacks, status elements that all truly punish you if you don't learn to fight. Learning how to parry this guy felt so good, so good. Like just the entire spectacle of it all. You go from fighting the slow and boring Mad Donkey to this super fast and brutal Scrapped Watchman who is brimming with electricity. I heard someone compare him to the blood-starved beast from Bloodborne, and I'd have to agree. This was a fight I didn't want to summon help for because it truly feels so good to accomplish the fight alone. It feels good to parry and stagger this guy. This fight gives you no room to breathe, no room to relax. You must be on your toes or you're done for. You are forced to recognize and learn a fast pattern, and I love it. Ugh. It truly got my heart pumping, and even after fighting him 4 to 5 times in different playthroughs, it was truly an exciting battle each time. Not to mention, if you partake in his side quests, you learn his story, and it's a sad touch on a beautiful fight. Laxasia the Complete truly saved the latter half of this game for me. Not to say that the game was boring in the latter half, but I truly felt a slight lack in excitement and rhythm in the fights after the King of Puppets. But perhaps that is a good thing because you don't want every single fight to try to outdo the other. Sometimes you need just a regular challenge in between the great ones. Challenging Laxasia truly felt like a spectacle, like we were on a grand stage and battling for our lives. I learned her moves and it felt so rewarding, so fun. Also, this is another fight where it proves that you can't take the same strategy into every fight. For some bosses, parrying is amazing. For her, it felt like strafing and dodging did me the biggest favors and taking advantage of those slow recoveries she had. Then phase 2. Oh, phase 2. Oh, Simon, your sword, Laxasia, swears to protect this tower. What a phase transition. What a spectacle. What a battle. She takes flight and lobs balls of electricity at you. She makes you nervous with her speed and agility, her towering frame. I love this fight so much. She was so cool. Getting through her first phase felt like a challenge where you're rewarded with an even bigger one. When you stagger her and she fits in one last attack before kneeling, it really sells her determination to protect the tower. Despite becoming the first complete, even she had her limits that you could bring her to. Also, I must add, it is truly a crime that you do not get her weapon. Now, this is another fight where I regret summoning because they really beefed up the Spectre by the time I got to her, and I feel like it took the win away from me. I didn't learn her phase 2 as much as I would have liked, but I still got to enjoy the amazing battle that it was to fight her. Also, people called her the Melania of this game. I'd have to disagree. The next boss on this list, for me, was the true Melania of Lies of P. The nameless puppet. Are you shocked? Probably not. After beating Simon, we meet Geppetto at the bottom of the tower and have the choice between giving him our heart or refusing and keeping it. Obviously, the only true option is to refuse, and when you do, he pulls out the walking corpse of his son Carlo from the trunk next to him. The nameless puppet is the best, most difficult, brutalizing, morale-crushing spectacle of a battle in this entire game. And boy did he save the end of the game for me, because Simon was not going to do it for me. Not only was he a great representation of the overall story, puppets becoming humans, humans becoming puppets, but he brought me to the brink of tears from frustration. As I said earlier, when I fight a final boss, I want to utilize every skill, item, ability that I have learned thus far. This fight was that. This fight took me hours to beat. I adopted so many strategies from parrying, blocking, dodging, tossing throwables, changing weapons, altering my build, respecking. I did everything I could to take this puppet down. Just like with Melania and Elden Ring, I did everything. I tried everything to defeat her. No other fight in this game tore me down this much. Phase 1 was a slow but brutal fight. In Phase 2, my god was it a disaster. Flashy, devastating, multiple fury attacks where I thought I learned to block them, but brutalized me if I did one slight misstep. This fight tore me down so much that I seriously considered giving my heart up, but no. I refused. After everything we've learned, what we've been through, I would not give in. Geppetto turned his real son into a puppet and made a puppet into a real boy. There was no other way out. This fight was a horror show. It looked and felt impossible, but the spectacle of it all felt great. You feel like you were fighting for your heart. The timing was so sharp and precise, it left no room for errors or mistakes. Not to mention, there was no Spectre to help you. If you wanted to win this fight, you had to do it on your own. It made the victory feel so good. In conclusion, Lies of P was a beautiful and wonderful game full of bosses that really challenged me and brought me to my limits. Despite a few of these fights being annoying or underwhelming, the bosses that set a grand stage really blew me away. The game teaches you something, forces you to change up your strategy, even your weapons, to overcome the challenges. And it feels so good when you do. So, what do you think of my tier list? Agreeable? Awful? Where would you put your rankings? If you want to see future Lies of P, Souls-like or Soulsborne content in general, consider becoming a space cadet. I want to do videos like these for every Souls game I play. Either way, thank you all for watching, and I will see you all later!